We're going to move now into the discussion phase for us as we relate to what we've done today and what we're going to do tomorrow. And we're going to begin this with a discussion. We had to, because of the sake of time this morning, truncate some of the committee's questions for Dr. Belay related to his report, which I remind everyone his slides are in our packet for you to be able to refer to. So we're going to start this, though, as Eileen said a little bit ago. She was charged, and a subgroup of people were charged with evaluation of the website, CDC website, and she is ready to give a report, and we'll ask her to do that now.
Thank you, Galen. The CDC website review panel, which consists of myself, Dane Cook, Steve Kravchik, Nancy Klimas, and Lily Chu, continues. We focused on the CME courses on the CDC website. There are two of them, one on diagnosis and management, the other on sleep. And as always, I had a teleconference with Dr. Unger, Mr. O'Connor, and Ms. Johnson. We were at our laptops, and we went line by line. I gave many, many comments. We focused on tone, language, and content, also on photos. And I'll speak on that in a minute. Lily Chu gave extensive comments with scientific citations. Nancy Klimas has endorsed her comments. And Dane made some comments, both written and verbal, which he may share today, and Steve might make some oral comments. I basically thought that the tone was much better than usual. I think maybe because it's geared toward the doctors, and so I didn't find it as offensive or condescending. The language I always feel can be much stronger, using more medical terminology, and really conveying the extreme disability of the disease. When I read anything that on the CDC website, I have a hard time relating to it. It just does not sound like the disease of ME/CFS. It sounds like a condition of fatigue. The content, the biggest problem that I had with content was the part on case definition. It lists numerous case definitions, and for me, that's the fundamental problem, because when you list the Canadian consensus criteria, the Fukuda, and the Oxford, they're all radically different. And I don't understand how you can diagnose this disease with such divergent case definitions. Oxford uses just 6 months of fatigue, and that just isn't a neuroimmune disease that I know of. So we talked about that. The photos I drew on, and by the way, all of my comments I draw on the testimony over the years, talking with patients and advocates, and talking with my fellow committee members and colleagues. But the photos really jump out at you because they portray people that are in suits and ties and going to work. A lot of them were yawning, and I explained that yawning is not a symptom of ME. Tiredness isn't either, sleepiness. And there were a lot of photos of people like falling asleep at their desk or on the job, or, you know, the photo in the orthostatic intolerance section had a person falling asleep in the filing cabinet, and that person would have fainted because of neurally mediated hypotension and such. But we wanted the photos to reflect the severity, and I'll let Dr. Unger explain what her philosophy was, but basically she just felt like she wanted to present, you know, a more positive side. And what I would like to do is just portray a realistic side to show the disease from A to Z, what it looks like. And sometimes it looks like someone in a bed that's tube fed. Sometimes it looks like a person that's couch bound, not working. Other times it looks like a person in a casual outfit going to the grocery store with their groceries in the car, and they have to lay back 30 minutes before they can make the drive home. And sometimes it is a person in a suit trying to get to work and they're clinging to a railing at Grand Central Station or whatever. But none of the photos looked like that. And the photos, a lot of photos were on exercise and people that looked incredibly fit in really nice outfits, some provocative outfits. Some of the advocates didn't like that. And in really upscale gyms. And most people with this disease are in the poverty level and can't even afford a gym, but more importantly, if they had proper advice, wouldn't go to a traditional gym because exercise can be harmful. So we focused on that. And I did want to make one point, and that is that Dr. Unger pointed out that a few ME/CFS experts did ask to be contributors, and I appreciate that because we are always asking the CDC to reach out, and on one hand we are appreciative of that, but realistically I know that even by soliciting input of experts, sometimes the final product isn't, what maybe they intended or what should have been included, because there are other authors of the CMEs, not just the 3 experts. There's Jim Jones, and there are many CDC people on as authors as well. So I really hope that it can be improved, particularly on the case definition side. So I'd now like to throw it over to Steve or Dane if you're ready to make some comments.
I'm happy to. I had a long conversation with Eileen, and I've gone over Dr. Chu's comments and have gone over the CMEs several different times. I'd like to start off with a question, though, for Ermias or Beth. Have any of the experts come forward and communicated to you that they had some disagreement with the way that the CMEs are being presented?
No.
Have they seen them?
So,
Have any of the experts seen the CME materials?
They're published. We told them, we sent a thank you letter to them because they volunteered their time. We asked them, they didn't obviously come to us and say they wanted to write a CME, right. But we solicited them to write a CME. It is correct that the process of writing a CME course, you start off, with one version and it does go through multiple edits. The final version they probably didn't see, but they saw something that was very, very close to it. I did send a letter of thanking them, and I gave them a link to the website when it was published. So,
all right, thank you. The other thing that I wanted to point out was I agreed a lot with Eileen and Dr. Chu's assessment of the site in terms of it. There were quite a few typos. I think that regardless of it's a vetted CME or not, which I know is difficult to change after thousands of people have taken it, could probably be fixed. The photos seem like an easy thing to change, which would not change the content of the CME to make it more representative of the illness that's being represented on the CME. So I agreed wholeheartedly with that. I do not agree on the case definition criticism. This is the state of the knowledge. There's no endorsement in the CMEs of any particular case definition other than stating that CDC uses Fukuda. It's just a reality that those case definitions are out there, and if these are educational pieces on the website, then it needs the full spectrum. The physicians need to be informed. They have the right to know that what's available and what's out there currently. There's no endorsement on there for a single case definition. It just says that these exist. It's just an educational reality. And so that's my disagreement with that. Overall, I found it to be a pretty balanced but really superficial, and I'm not an expert on CMEs. Maybe superficial is the way that it has to be to reach the number of people that it reaches. It's fairly light in terms of scientific and medical knowledge, in terms of the terminology that's used, but again, I think that this was an intention of it. And that's pretty much it. I agreed with a large extent. I disagreed on the case definition issue. I just think that it's, that's currently what's the state of the knowledge on the disease. And I found a lot of the criticism really to be more of a condemnation of the state of the science, and not so much, and that's valid, and that's a very valid criticism. There's much that can be improved in the science of chronic fatigue syndrome and ME, but I don't think that that's necessarily a criticism of this. That should be a criticism of the CME.
Steve?
I heartily disagree with Dane. I think that, one, we have endorsed the primer, which has the Canadian consensus definition in it. I think it could be noted there who endorses them. Nobody sitting around this table would say that 6 months of chronic fatigue is adequate to diagnose chronic fatigue syndrome. And as a case definition, I don't think it deserves to be in part of it, even if you're trying to educate doctors. Maybe you tell them that your experts in chronic fatigue syndrome don't think this is adequate, so don't use it. But you have the Canadian consensus definition that's in the primer by the IACFS people. Why not refer them to the primer instead of giving them things that have equal weight in the way they're presented? That's the case definition concern I have. I share Eileen's concern about the pictures. That's easy to fix, and I understand why pictures were chosen, because you want to try and be upbeat, but sometimes that muddles the message, and I think in this case it does. We've talked about the black box for exercise. I think that's really important, and I'm glad you're consulting with MECFS experts. I think we could really help in at least feeding comments into the approval system as we have, and other things. And then my concern is always with CBT. I don't think there are any outcome measures in an evidence-based system that warrant the type of coverage that CBT is getting compared to other things. If we're going to be evidence-based medicine, let's be evidence-based medicine, because you don't have any outcome measures.
Marianne?
Just one comment in terms of whether or not the CDC endorses a case definition. I haven't read the CME, but I have read your website, and you definitely say the CDC uses the Fukuda definition, and you don't list other ones. Not in that sentence, or you don't indicate that you think these others are better or worse or equal, and I think the very old Fukuda case definition is usurped its use.